All right, let's talk about 9/11. This is a big sort of gaping hole in the entire story right now. We've covered Zorro Ranch. We've been covering the royal families. We've been talking. I mean, how many different angles have we been talking about as it relates to the Epstein story?
For weeks,
yes, everything. But one big gaping hole, of course, missing is where was Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and their involvement on 9/11, and why are there so many documents missing from the tranche of documents that was released during the time frame, like right before, during, and after 9/11? Nearly, according to some reports, upwards of 25,000 different documents just not released by the Department of Justice as it relates to 9/11. Does it have anything to do with Israel? Does it have anything to do with the CIA bringing down those towers? Does it have anything to do with the cover-up? We do know about the Shadow Commission that Ghislaine Maxwell was apparently invited to, whatever that is. So we wanted to unpack that today with Jason Burmis. He is an investigative journalist and independent journalist who's been looking at this closely, of course, a truth teller in the 9/11 space. Jason, welcome to the show. Great to see you.
Thank you so much for having me.
So a lot to unpack here. First of all, just your thought at a high level of why this information is just critically left out of the tranche of documents that we got from the Department of Justice.
Well, getting into the gaps, there's also a very odd gap in the mid to late 90s. And I would imagine that gap may be there because we now have confirmation that Maria Farmer went to the FBI in 1996 on Epstein. So there's a possibility there was some kind of investigation there. As far as getting into what you're talking about, we'll bring up just a little visual since you've got me full screen. These are the large gaps. Now, we know that although we have 3 million pages, they've announced that there are 2.5 million more. Now, there's that gap in the late 90s, and there are the financial gaps in that period pre 9/11 and post 9/11. And here's another graph for you right here to break down the fact that it seems like there are 15,000 ledger lines from the financing completely gone. Now, a lot of this would be speculation, but the truth of the matter is that Epstein was very, very involved in the arms industry. It's one of the things that is not discussed widely about him, and all the way back into the Iran-Contra network that was never really broken up. And you just mentioned Israel. Well, Israel actually bought the weapons from Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia and then shipped them down. They were part of that network. And there was actually a really great piece by the New York Times, although they tried to whitewash it. I would encourage people to read it. It's going to take you a while. But they did this just as the first trove of documents came out, and it's called Scams, Schemes, Ruthless Cons, the Untold Story of Jeffrey Epstein and How He Got Rich. Well, in that article, they talk about two major relationships, Stanley Pottinger and Douglas Lease. And these people are intricately involved in what? Arms dealing. Now, we're going to get into that Shadow 9/11 Commission document in a moment, but there is another document. Now, this one is a lot harder to break down because we don't really have the names of who sent it and why they got it. And quite frankly, a lot of it seems unhinged, but they certainly took it seriously. And if you look at this highly redacted document, towards the bottom, if there is a grand jury on 9/11-01 and Epstein, then Berman knows they connect. And of course, they're talking about the SDNY prosecutor, Jeffrey Berman, who obviously worked on a lot of the 9/11 cases as well. We know that Epstein not only worked in finances, but got financial tips on a global scale. For instance, we have that Lord Mandelson email where Lord Mandelson is telling Epstein about the $500 billion bailout for the European Union before it happens. Can you imagine types of things that you would be able to do with that information?
The weather is still cold. We know the winter, we have another 6 weeks at least because of the groundhog. So you need to make sure you've got your warm weather jackets at the ready. Now, the bearskin hoodie is one of our favorites because it is incredibly versatile. It can be layered, but it really doesn't need to. It's insulated from water, wind. We have a terrible windstorm here in the Rocky Mountains. You wouldn't know it under your bearskin because it is really that good. So, it's also really good for the types that don't like to wear big jackets. nice. I drive in it because it's thin enough that I feel like I can move. You know how you're not supposed to drive in a puff coat? That's not this. So we want to encourage you to check out the bearskin hoodie today and all of the bearskin offerings because we are such big fans of it. It's really kept us warm this winter, even in the coldest days. If you text Redacted to 36912, you'll get 60% off the bearskin hoodie today, or go to Bear, that's BAER, .skin/redacted. One more time, that's BAER.skin/redacted. Check them out. I am seeing people wearing these all over the place. So yeah, if you want one too, and I'm going to tell you you do, then text Redacted to 36912.
And getting back to the arms dealing angle with Khashoggi,
Yes.
that was one of the people's, Pottinger, Lease, Khashoggi. I don't think he ever stopped arms dealing. In fact, if you go to this interview right here, and I encourage people to go check out this clip as well, with Lewis Black, of all people. He talks about a dinner that he went to at Epstein's house, and he actually went there with Bobby Slayton, who is now becoming notorious for being in one of the quote-unquote pizza emails there. And he talked how Epstein took him into a room, and he had a whiteboard up, and he talked about discussing weapon systems with the Israeli defense minister. You see, Ehud Barak, other than being the prime minister, was also the defense minister. So big time arms and weapons deals there. You know what Prince Andrew did for the UK? He was their arms dealer as well. So if you have a time period pre 9/11, pre DHS, where maybe Epstein is moving and shaking in these arenas with other people's names that may come up, that's something that you would like to keep from the public. And just to kind of discuss how we celebrate our arms dealers in this country, especially ones with Israeli connections, and I know this sounds wild, but we do, both Arnon Milken, big Hollywood guy, huge arms dealer, along with Sidney Pollack, another actor, director from Hollywood, that a lot of people that are now becoming hip to this will know as the villain in Eyes Wide Shut of all movies. So I think the reason that a lot of these things are being kept under wraps is because that network has literally been going through the 80s, 90s, 2000s. We've had no real criminal accountability except for in Iran-Contra, where everybody got what? Slap on the wrist, pardons after the fact, and the face of that operation, Oliver North, got book deals, became a TV star, and made millions of dollars. That should let everybody know how these people are actually treated.
Yeah, Fox News show and a Fox News contributor, exactly.
Oh my God. Okay, so whatever is in that tranche of missing documents would be very telling. But I have to imagine he didn't just stop in, let's say, 2002 talking about this kind of stuff. So we have to surmise that there are probably documents withheld in the other 3 million that would pertain to this, because it would be sort of proof positive of what he had already been capable of doing, what he knew. There has to be more that we just don't see, and we are being forced to fill in the gaps because it's so suspicious. But I guess let's spitball what we think, he may have done to continue to leverage his knowledge of something that, was perverted in the 9/11 Commission.
Well, certainly if he had foreknowledge and then he let others know of foreknowledge, he could have hung that over their head. But let's get into that shadow commission email, because I think that's really important, because it's not addressed to Epstein, who very much was involved in narrative management with his associates, the Leslie Groffs, the Sarah Kalins, et cetera, contacting people. We have, for instance, the Harvey Levin email, where he's trying to get favorable stories in TMZ. We have the Faith Cates emails, where they're talking about Newsweek and paying for stories and planting stories. So that's why when Ghislaine Maxwell gets contacted by this gentleman, Edward J. Epstein, who is not related, by the way. And it's a very short email, but you see he also has a website there. This is in the beginning of 2003, before the official 9/11 Commission is put together. Any interest on the Shadow Commission on 9/11, the membership list is secret. So it was tough for me to find anything on this, but he had actually put together a website on this, asking some of the questions that, in my mind, are a bit limited hangout. For instance, in this piece I was able to pull up, he's questioning whether or not box cutters were used. Now, I know that you guys have dived deep into 9/11. I've made 2 films on it myself. And when you talk about this gentleman, he was big into the JFK assassination, okay? he literally not only put books out on it, but then like he would make some questions. But for instance, in this New York Times piece from 2008, he basically said after 40 years, none of the theories have panned out. However, in regards to 9/11, and this is also interesting, he did a really great piece unraveling some of the inconsistencies in the anthrax attacks. Another interesting note is that in 2010, it said that this guy, Mr. Epstein, is currently completing a book on the 9/11 Commission.
What?
That book never came out. On top of that, he is part of this little piece. He seems to defend Israel quite a bit. So in the Epstein emails, we have this email, and this should show you this is a global network, between Sultan bin Salim and Jeffrey Epstein. And he says, I am attaching some media clippings regarding the Israeli operation in Dubai. I will call you around 7 p.m. Eastern. What happened doesn't help anyone. So what they're actually talking about there is they're talking about an assassination that had taken place from the IDF or the Israeli Mossad on this Hamas member. And Epstein, it seems in both cases, is basically running PR for that campaign. Your next segment is going to be on professors. It just so happens that this J. Edward Epstein, also a professor at MIT, just like Noam Chomsky. So, again, these circles sometimes are a little tighter than you think. I would imagine, again, this was about narrative management. In one of these pieces that they have, the 6 myths of 9/11, not only do they get in the box cutters, but also the mythos that the hijackers may have wanted to use crop dusting planes for bio attacks, etc. But at the same time, he always goes back to essentially the mainline narrative. And that's why I think he was contacting Ghislaine Maxwell, because although she likes to portray herself as a victim, if you dig just the slightest bit deep, her and her family have been a part of narrative management on behalf of intelligence for years, especially with her father, Robert.
Oh my gosh, J. Edward Epstein. Maybe you can unpack, just before we let you go here, Jason, just what this shadow commission would have done. Maybe you can explain that. I mean, it's sort of like an alternative in many ways to like the fake 9/11 commission, which of course was a whitewashing, critical pieces left out on purpose. Total hack job was the 9/11 commission. Is that run in parallel?
Well, I would imagine so, especially because of some of the context. Now, this email is from January, right? And one of those pages, that website's from March. So he absolutely gets this thing going. But when you're looking at whether or not there's another Epstein connection, turns out that although they tried to get Henry Kissinger as the chair of the commission, his co-chair was going to be George Mitchell, the politician who had already been in a bunch of the Epstein files and accused of some of the abuse of these young girls going back, I don't know, a decade plus. Now, it wasn't obviously out at the time of that commission, but George Mitchell stepped down and certainly was connected to Epstein. So I would imagine that if we actually get these other 2.5 million pages, there will certainly be other information in there. But as you know, because of the massive amount of redactions that we really don't know what they're taking away, I'm unsure as to exactly how much we're going to get. But certainly there are major connections that we can already make with what's going on now.
Gosh. Jason Burmis, man, love having you on the show, Jason. Thank you so much. And as we get more documents here, hopefully, if we get any more information, we'd love to have you back on here for sure. Where can people find your show and what you cover on a regular basis?
Yeah, you can check me out on YouTube. We're finally remonetized after almost 6 years. Took my channel 5 times, got it back every time. But go to my playlist section there. It's at Jason Burmis everywhere. And go check out my documentary films for free, especially on 9/11. Fabled Enemies, Loose Change Final Cut. And then if you want the bigger picture, you want to see about who these people in the Epstein network are, my films Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, and Shade the Motion Picture.
Awesome. All right. Very good.
Jason,
thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Great to have you on the show. I've
never seen that tidbit about Epstein writing a book on 9/11. That's gold. I can't believe it.
By the way, just real quick, Jason, I mean, the guy couldn't even, if you read his emails, he doesn't even like punctuate his emails. Reading his sentence structure is just absolutely painful. This is like pre-AI. How's this guy going to put a book together?
Well, first of all,
wasn't going
that's
to be him.
J. Edward Epstein.
J. Edward.
not
Sorry.
the other.
Oh, okay.
And that's why I'm wondering, because that's the guy that was putting the Shadow Commission of 9/11 together.
Yeah.
He's connected. He's asking Ghislaine Maxwell. You know, as far as Epstein's communications, I would say this. You know, a lot of people out there have said he was a dupe for years and years and years. I watched the 2 hours of that 15 to 18 hour Bannon interview. That's not what I saw. What I saw was a very intelligent guy that was connected to these same people I've been talking about for years, and really somebody that looks like a Kissinger or a Brzezinski behind the scenes in the financial arenas and beyond.
Yeah, and a guy
scarier.
who he just doesn't take the time to write emails well, and he's so busy. He's just sending fast emails, thoughts, stream of consciousness kind of stuff. But I think he was definitely a genius. That's for sure, for sure. Jason, great to see you. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
And I just want to say I've seen the loose change, the cut that you did, and it's really good. People should check it out. Yeah.
Awesome. People go check it out on his channel at Jason Burmis on YouTube. Jason, great to see you, man. Thank you so much.